So welcome to week 9 of this AutoCAD course, Collaborate Effectively. So over the past few weeks, we had seen different topics, and particularly last week we have seen several productivity enhancement techniques. And so this week we'll add on to it how we can enhance our productivity further and also how to use those effectively so as to collaborate within our colleagues and also to cross applicate the drawing learnings that we have and then use existing drawing material. So towards that, we'll cover these topics. So first and foremost, we'll look into various file management techniques. What is a file? What are the folder structures? Why file version control is required? What are the different naming conventions? So we'll dwell a lot on this file management techniques that will help you first and foremost to be a effective, a productive worker or a productive designer, and rather having a system in place will also help you to collaborate effectively within all your colleagues and then have a good revision document that can explain all the variations that comes into your drawing. So next, we look into X referencing, that is an external referencing, that is taking a different drawing onto your drawing for either reference or to retaining your drawing. So we look into additional command to it, X binding and then explode to see how it is coinciding with the external references. And next also we'll dwell a lot into the design center that is available in AutoCAD and tool palettes. So we'll see how these two can be used effectively to both use existing designs as well as to be more productive in your workplace. So we'll look into the various file management techniques. So the file is typically the current drawing or the project that you're working on. So why is it being important? Why? Because we encounter and we involve various changes to the drawing or to the project along the project life cycle. So this life cycle means that from the consumption stage, the consumption one, and then it goes on to several modifications or changes, and then finally gets released to the drawing. And then again, this is the drawing level. Then it goes to the other production level, quality level, and then finally to the end product. So this is how your project is going to, you know, evolve across various life cycles throughout the journey. So the drawing file will be the start point of this. And when we are going to do this life cycle evolution, we'll be having lot many updations or reversal back to previous versions or modifying a certain parameters and so on. So it's a continuously evolving process. That is, the drawing that you're working on is not a straight line object. It is an iterative and repetitive process. And as we discussed, it has to go through lots of phases of approvals or modification for each and every changes that you're doing. So if certain changes are not approved by the committee and they have to revert it back, then you go back to the previous version and then proceed on from there. So the file typically goes through a lot of modifications to get the final one. So that everything is going to affect the current drawing that you're working on. So this is how important the file is. So next, how to keep a track of them. So that's where this file management comes in. So why to keep a track of the files? This is a very important area because typically what we will be saving the drawings as, I'll give you a few scenarios here. So it will be typically a my drawing, or you go ahead and name with the detail like in the previous examples what we've seen was it's a hexagonal nut with 8 mm major diameter. And the other ways of nomenclature is just go by the default naming because drawing XX, so the X represent the number, and this is the AutoCAD's default naming nomenclature for drawing 1. And what happens if you modify it? You typically save it as drawing 1 final, so thinking that this is going to be the final one. But what happens is once you keep on going it will still goes to undergoing a modification and then you name as final. So this is all some typical examples of what we see in day-to-day life. And again, when you copy this file onto another file, or suppose if you open a read-only drawing file and then the system prompts that it's a read-only file, there are some restrictions to it. we have to create a new file or copy it in as a different name and then work on. So then Windows do you the honors, it names it as copy of drawing one, and then you keep on working on it. So now obviously you're working on the same file, but within this we have gone through many variations, and those many variations get saved as different versions to it. And if you as you're the person working on, you can quickly look into what are the various changes based on the names. But as time progresses, you do not know what files contain which details, or why a new file was created in place of the old file. So this is where you have to keep a track of all the changes, and a requirement of the file management kicks in. So this is about the file. But generally, even when you have so many variations in the names, you also have one more, critical issue that you face on, that is, where did I keep it? Is it either in the folder X or folder Y or in drive Z or H, or in which IP address I put in if you are working in a collaborative environment? So then all chaos breaks out because you don't know where it is. And typically your boss comes in and says that I require that file right now, and you're not able to find it because it is not indexed and put it in the required location, or you might have moved to a different project and you couldn't recollect on which one. So because these situations, typically what you face is you forget the file name or the project location or both. You do not know how you have saved it, and you use the Windows Explorer, all the search options, advanced search options, everything, it keeps on running, but it does not give back your required files. Or finally, even if you search it, you have spent a lot amount of time to retrieve just a file, but you do not know that that file is the required file or not, because you are just going by the name. Because if your typical naming is of these kinds, then it's again difficult to search in like the required file. So again, now where did I keep it? So that's where your folder management strategy comes in. So we look into typical folder management scenarios. So typically what we have here is you either use the existing folder structure or use the default folder name. It means that you use in whatever drives it is, just go by the nomenclature new folder, and then within the new folder and existing file name. So what you're doing is you're using the default folder nomenclature structure that Windows prompts you. So next is there's no indication to hierarchy. Hierarchy means a logical flow of information within the folder. So it means that the folder name denotes that these are the files within which the folder encompasses. So it means that if you break down the project into different stages, then each and every folder should be named in that case. So we look into further in how a hierarchy means it, but right now we can see that there's no hierarchy that is typically goes into the folders that we go into, and hence the files would be available in different folders or drive, and particularly in your local machine or the PC or in a distributed network. So it's not categorized or not saved in a structural format, and there is a high probability that you either delete the file or lose it altogether because you have not indexed it in the proper manner, and you have not allocated certain restrictions, folder restrictions, for modifying them. So those kind of shortcomings can lead to folder deletions or misplacing those folders. So ultimately, you have the risk of losing out your designs as well as the other associated files. So having said that, there are a lot of opportunities for the file or the document or the project folders getting mislocated or getting misplaced or edited by mistake. So all these things we have seen in the previous slide. So what impact does it directly have in the organization? So let us quickly look into some facts and figures. So companies on an average spend typically $20 in labor, that is in manpower cost, to file a document, and close to $120 in manpower to find a misfiled document. Because just $120 or $20, what you mean is the man hours that is spent into the process of finding a file or creating a file. Okay, so this is how you quantify in organization terms. And close to $220 in labor to reproduce a lost document. What he means by saying is to create or filing a document is, has the least amount of cost. But the cost of finding a misfiled document is close to 60 times, whereas it's close to 100 times when you have to rework the entire procedure to recreate the document. And another way of saying is out of 100 documents that you produce, nearly 7.5% of all the documents. So it means that for 100 documents, close to 8 documents get lost and 3 of the remainder get misfiled. So you see, this is not a typical scenario that you would like to place yourself in. It means that you might be the originator of the file or you might be the person who is responsible for that file. Then you would not like to be in that position to be responsible or be answerable for those misfiled or lost documents. And professionals typically spend 5 to 15% of the time reading the information, but up to 50% looking for it, searching for it. It means that if you're taking a drawing where you want to look into some key dimensions, your 50% of the overall time that you allocate for this work is consumed by looking for the file and retrieving it only. And after retrieving, you find a partly amount of time to look into the required information. So this 50% of the time is a non-value added time because it's not going to help you or the company or the customer. Only the 5 to 15% of the time is the valuable additions that you give to the organization or to the customer because you're inferring something out of it. Whereas the time that is spent in looking into is quite high. Why I'm emphasizing this is to ensure that you understand the criticality behind the file management impact that has on the organizations. Also, one more statistic is close to $24 an average cost to process a single invoice manually, whereas 40% of 1,200 organizations survey indicate disaster recovery planning is not a priority at all. So disaster recovery means in case of certain loss of material or loss of men or in those scenarios, 40% of the 1,200 organization, they do not prioritize this. So it means that they do not have systems in place that protect their information. And the previous point means that they have to manually process all the informations to locate it or deliver it. It means that they do not have an information system in place. Likewise, one more statistics says that 2 out of 5 companies who experience a disaster, that is, they are a part of the or the victims of disasters, are out of business in 5 years. Why? Because they do not have the mechanism to retrieve all the processes to them. They have to recreate all the. You look into all the first 3 points. The cost of misfiling or losing a document is very high. So this has a huge impact on the organization. So by this you can understand the gravity behind the situation to have a robust file or a document management process. So there are again different quantifications of the design challenges that are related to data management that we can pull. So this is one representation from Autodesk PDM's tool. So what they say here is nearly 49% of the time, that is 50% of the normal time, is spent in sharing information with other departments because you are working in a collaborative environment, and hence the typical data management process involves sharing those information that you've created or working on to different departments, and that involves close to 50% of the time. And again, as seen in the previous slide, close to 46% is spent on finding the right information or the right file. And then 43% is spent on managing change. Managing change as in there comes an update and you have to incorporate those updates into the current drawing and then get it into a release stage and then propagate the change across the organization so that that change gets reflected in all the work that is being currently carried on. So that is what is change management related to your design process. And next 35% of the time is spent on working on wrong or outdated data. This is linked with the previous point because if you do a change or do an updation to the drawing, it has to get automatically reflected in all the related processes that are downstream. It means that if you're working on a drawing X, from which there are several derivatives that are derived, so then whatever changes you're making on drawing X should get automatically reflected in all the other drawings or other persons that are working upon the drawing. Else, we have the risk of working on a wrong or outdated data, and hence you have to do it all over again. And 29% of the time is spent in reusing the data. It means that you either take in previous drawings or previous blocks or references, whatever we have seen earlier, we are reusing the data that we are already have created. So it also closely relates to, if you're not able to find those data, then typically you have to recreate the data also. But typically the data information means that close to 29% of the data are being reused in the system. So there is being a requirement of data from the previous data that needs to be pulled in. And then around 29% is spent in managing design projects, because those impact the project life cycle that we have spoken about earlier. And then nearly 26% of the time is spent in collaborating with engineers in different locations. So here what it means that you have to continuously keep a track of the files that are being circulated among the different locations, and then you have to have a solid the IT infrastructure wherein you can save and distribute the data confidentially. And also close to 25% of the time is spent in sharing the info externally. Externally means that you are working on a drawing or a design, and after a particular stage, then you have to release the drawing to your suppliers, to our external auditor, or to other customers who take the drawing to the next stage. So it means that you're going to share information from an internal network to an external network. So these are the different data flow that takes place in a typical organization, and see how much of weightage it is carrying in every stage. So it all boils down to a single file, that is your drawing. So how you are storing it, how you are recording it, and then how you are placing it, it's all going to matter. Because if you're able to categorize, then locate your data effectively, then you're going to be a leader in your area. As a worksman or as a manager, you can ensure that you keep a well-defined process in place within your institution, because there are a lot many PDM, product data management tools, or lifecycle management tools available in big organizations. But they all boil down to the simple fact of maintaining a neat file, neat folder structure, and neat revision structure. We'll look into those basics so that even in your typical training process, you can involve them, so that you'll be well versed with all the factors that are involved in the file management, so that you can be a master of that.